This exhibition, in a lot of ways, I consider to be a collection of poems, so to speak, that are embodied within these particular paintings. The reason being is that when I think about the mechanics or the utility of poetry, it functions as a means to think about grand ideas that extends beyond the self, but has the ability to provoke one's own interiority. The title of the exhibition, Meraki, is a Greek word which is intended to mean to pour one's soul into one's work, or alternatively, the essence of oneself. As an artist, when I encountered the word, I was actually quite struck because I felt that it offered an alternative definition to ideas of labor and work as it pertains to the studio. As an artist who spends quite a bit of time, working and revising different projects within my studio, I found the definition of Meraki quite opportunistic because the idea of pouring one's soul into one's work also brings with it an opportunity to soul share with your audience and with other viewers with different ideas that I might be negotiating in my studio at the time. Although most of my work tends to deal with ideas of leisure, magical realism, and the Black life, my exhibition here almost behaves as though it's an expansion of thoughts around my ideas in my studio, which have grown to include ideas of kinetic leisure, poetry, but also interiority. And it was important for me to think about the work in that context because while the work does have a relationship to the Black imagination, the external materials that fuel this project can be found by everyone just outside their doors through observations of the natural world or through engaging with a particular book or a particular writer around a collection of ideas. When I think about the utility of magical realism in the everyday, it, for me, fuels its way through the forms of kinetic leisure or through modes of walking. And when I encounter an idea or a phenomena or a natural occurrence that excites my imagination, that for me, points to this idea that even within the natural world, there are things that we can experience that borders on the edges of the surreal. The painting that's actually to the left of me here, the Indra sign, is a great example of that. Whereas a lot of the external materials that fuel my imagination, that leads me into the space of magical realism, can be found for everyone, whether it be a collection of cloudscapes or stars or leafless trees that cast shadows that look like lightning bolts. All of these things are actually quite normal, but the phenomena of these natural occurrences really do lend themselves to the surreal. For this particular body of work, along with its predecessor in New York at the Leave Room for the Wind exhibition, the poet Mary Oliver was quite important and influential to my development as an artist and as a thinker as I branched out into this body of work. What I appreciated and what struck me about Mary Oliver's practice and her poetry was her commitment to not only engaging with the world with a light step, but also observing the world with passion and with a sense of devotion. One of the strategies that I came across in her book titled Devotions, which is a collection of over hundreds of her poems that I return to on occasion, is that one of the guiding principles for how to live a life is to observe the world, to be astonished, and then to tell about it. And that was a kind of guiding compass that I find myself really championing as an artist and as a visual thinker. I've always been of the mind that it's not simply enough to consume information or to consume ideas, but you also must be generating new ideas and generating new information and finding ways to engage a collective audience around the particular ideas that you might find yourself invested in.